Okay, you're live.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I hope your Monday was well. It was a little rainy here in Kentucky. I know up in Canada it's snowing. So I guess I can't complain. This presentation is based on 3 decades of research. I formed the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization actually in 1997, but I was doing private research before I formed the organization. I'm no expert by any means. Really, there's not many experts in this field. If there were, we would probably already have a body by now. So I do have a lot of unanswered questions. I'm learning as I go day by day and expedition by expedition. I'm still learning about these mysterious creatures. After my presentation, if you want, you could post your questions in the Facebook comments and I will answer those questions for you. You could post them during the presentation too. I just won't get to those until after the presentation. So stick around for some questions and answers. Our mission is really to document all the credible sightings in Kentucky. We are a non-kill group, so we don't condone killing a Bigfoot. We do want to protect them. And I get the question all the time, you know, why do you need to protect them? They're doing just fine on their own. As I speak, we are destroying their habitat with deforestation, urban sprawl. Pretty soon, they'll have no place to reproduce. And I do believe possibly in the next 100 years, on the eastern part of the states, at least, many of these creatures will go extinct because they cannot reproduce. In Kentucky, we have a lot of pockets of these sightings in different counties, and I do believe they stay in these counties. They don't migrate, they don't hibernate. However, as you know, if they can't reproduce with other clans or other Bigfoots, then they would, you know, with inbreeding and so forth, they'd go extinct. So I'm hoping to protect some of the forest here in Kentucky. And if I can get enough evidence without killing one, go to our state legislators and establish laws to protect them. So that's kind of our mission. We do educate a lot through library presentations like this, and also through conferences and also social media. So Kentucky is ranked in the top 5. There are a lot of reports, of course, that go unpublished. The BFRO is the national database. The KBRO is my organization. And you can see there, if we add them up, it's well over 400 reports. And this is a good map showing the sightings on the eastern part of the states. A lot of people, you know, think Bigfoot's only in the Pacific Northwest, but there's a lot on the eastern side too, as you can see. So these are sightings per county. Everything in Kentucky is by county, as you know, and most every county has had a sighting. Woodford has had 1 sighting, documented at least, which I'll go over today. And I'll go over some of the sightings in the neighboring counties as well. A lot of people won't report sightings because they're fear of being ridiculed. So I do talk to these witnesses, but a lot of times they don't want to publish their report. So I have an actual larger database than what's online. So one question we get is, what is a Bigfoot? So here are some theories of origin. Some researchers like myself believe Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature. Other researchers believe it may be paranormal or supernatural. And I'll go over some examples here. Flesh and blood means basically it's a hominid that has yet to gone extinct. We believe in the last 50,000 years, we have 7 different hominids existing on this planet based on their fossils that we've discovered. We also think Bigfoot is a descendant of Gigantopithecus, which lived 100,000 years ago in Asia and possibly came across the Bering Strait land bridge to North America. So a lot of scientists and academics, Bigfoot researchers, believe Bigfoot is a descendant of Giganto. If you are in the paranormal or supernatural camp, if you will, in the Bible, it talks about the Nephilims, which are fallen angels that came down and reproduced with humans. That's in the Bible. Some people believe Bigfoot is a Nephilim. And they have supernatural abilities, like they can cloak. In other words, just disappear right before your eyes. They can mind speak, which means they can speak telepathically. They can travel through portals. They find trackways where the footprints mysteriously stop. And this is a great explanation why we don't have a body yet. So this is a possibility. I don't know all the answers. This could be true. But I believe Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature and has adapted over thousands of years. And its very existence depends on its senses, its IQ. It has a very high survival IQ to avoid humans for this long. And they've adapted to their environments. So their eyesight, their hearing, their sense of smell is much better than ours. Even the way their feet are constructed, their feet actually flex in the middle. They have a mid-tarsal break, which means they're better suited to rough terrain where we wear shoes and we're not really adapted for rough environment like a Bigfoot lives in. So they've adapted to their environment to benefit them, to avoid us. And I'll show you some examples here. So our senses are actually getting worse. You know, we need glasses, like I'm wearing glasses. We need hearing aids. We rely on technology, which is a crutch. You know, loud music, cell phones, TV, computers, all hinder our senses. Where a Bigfoot, you know, they're in the woods and they have to utilize their senses to avoid us and also to prey on deer like they do in Kentucky mostly. So their senses have adapted, and they're like I like to say is they're the ninjas of the forest. So they are super smart, super elusive, as you know, although they do slip up sometimes. So we do have sightings, and usually that's when they're being forced out of their environment due to humans, or they're looking for food or possible mate. So sometimes they will slip up and be seen. And that's why we have a lot of reports of these creatures still. So this is a little experiment here. I've got a Bigfoot there on the right of the screen. And some people that believe Bigfoot can cloak, you know, the paranormal camp or walk through a portal. I believe a Bigfoot can blend in with this environment fairly easily through something called cryptic coloration, which I'll show you in a video here in a minute. Usually when we walk through the woods and we're looking around, if someone sees a Bigfoot, it's gone in a second. And you look over to your friend and say, hey, you just see that? And all of a sudden it's gone. Did it cloak? Did it walk through a portal? I believe it slipped behind a tree. I believe it ducked down in thick vegetation. They're super fast, super intelligent, and usually they don't even move if you're walking by and you won't even see them. this little experiment I like to do here is if you watch this Bigfoot and I count to 3, I want you to keep your eye on him as I count to 3 and see what happens. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Ta-da. You blinked your eyes, you know, or you looked away for a second and the creature's gone. I believe that's just being a super intelligent, sophisticated creature that can elude us. I don't really believe it can cloak or walk through portals. I'm not saying I'm correct. They might be able to do that. We don't know. We don't have the answers. That's just my belief. So here's another example of cryptic coloration. These are mountain goats, or they're related to mountain goats, or bull tar. This is a video here. I'm going to bring this YouTube video up here in a second. And you're going to watch the screen when this comes up. I might have to minimize this here. Hold on one second. Let me see. Well, maybe not. Okay. Let me go back to that real quick. Sorry about that. Go back to the screen, current slide. I was hoping to show you this video, but I don't really see it on my screen. So, well, I don't know if I can show you that. All right, I'm gonna have to come back to that video because it's not coming up on my screen. Basically, what that video is showing some bull tar on a mountainside, and someone shoots a gun, and all of a sudden these mountain goats jump up and run, but you can't see them in the beginning of the video. So if I have time, I'll come back to that video at the end of the presentation. So where are the bones or the fossils? In 2005, the first chimp fossils were discovered. That's not long ago. The chimp fossil and ape fossil is very sparse due to their environment where they die in forests and jungles. It's not very conducive to preserving fossils. Likewise for a Bigfoot. We do have some skeletons of giant human-like creatures found throughout the Ohio Valley. If you go on Google and you Google these giant human-like skeletons, you'll find dozens of newspaper articles showing or talking about these giant human-like skeletons, which the Smithsonian used to document up until the 20s. And then all of a sudden in the 20s, they stopped documenting these giant skeletons. Why, we don't know. A lot of people think there might be a government cover-up. It's possible. But these skeletons mysteriously disappear. One question I like to ask is, where do sick apex predators go in the woods? And one of the answers is they like to go hide when they're sick. A sick mountain lion or a bear usually will go off and hide when it's sick. In a sense, it's hiding its body, it's hiding its skeleton. So by the time we get there, all the all the smaller animals like porcupine and scavengers would disperse the bones. There's even a video of a deer eating another deer's bone on a game camera. So the bones vanish fairly quickly. There was a time lapse on Monster Quest of a deer carcass. It was strapped down, and within 1 month, every piece of that bone, every piece of that skeleton was gone. So it doesn't take long for the bones to disappear. In West Virginia, they did a survey on hunters. 90% of hunters never leave a designated trail or go more than a quarter mile from the trail. Bigfoot's not going to die right by the trail where you can find it. So again, some of these places are very remote where we don't want to go. And by the time we get there, the bones may be gone. They also may bury their dead. I don't have this in here, but if they watch Native Americans and also watch, us bury our kin, they might do the same thing. We find giant burial mounds in remote areas in the forests. I've found giant burial mounds with rocks, all the same size, just randomly placed. And of course, I don't disturb them. They could be Native American. I don't want to disturb the grave. But, are these Native American burial sites or Sasquatch? So some people think they could bury their dead. I have a friend who's a Bigfoot researcher in Tennessee. He also works in the ER at a children's hospital. And he asked one of his friends, who's former government, do you guys know about Bigfoot? And he said, yeah, we classify him as species 5. Again, that's hearsay. We don't know if that's true. I'm curious, if that's true, what are the other species that the government knows and we don't know? I mean, if you look at UFOs, right, just a couple of years ago, the government declassified 12,000 UFO reports. And that's why you're seeing a lot of UFO videos now on TV. And I mentioned we do have Gigantopithecus fossils, which was a 10-foot tall ape. And maybe Bigfoot is a descendant of Giganto. So here's another question we get. Okay, where are all the photos and videos? One time I was out researching, I had 3rd gen night vision on, and my buddy had his night vision on. Through my 3rd gen night vision, I can see his IR beam like a flashlight going through the woods. And if Bigfoot's nocturnal and they can see the IR from these cameras, they're going to avoid the camera. They might actually see the camera itself. The sharp edges stand out. It's not natural. I mean, they're highly intelligent. They can hear the mechanism. They can maybe smell it. They can sense the electromagnetic field. There's a lot of research on deer walking by, sensing the field and looking right at the camera because they can sense the EMF from game cameras. Now, Bigfoots do mess up sometimes. We do have photos online of Bigfoots caught on game cameras. The problem is there's a lot of hoaxes out there, so you don't know what to believe. Also, the problem is a lot of people don't want to be ridiculed. So if they post a picture online, they're going to get a lot of grief over it, or they'll get people coming knocking on their door. They want to hunt on their property, and they don't want trespassers, so they won't release the photos. I've seen some amazing photos of Bigfoots on game cameras, some of which I cannot release. I did get permission recently from a gentleman in Tennessee who took a picture of a Bigfoot. He was in his hunting blind, and it walked right in front of his hunting blind. It was on the ground, and he was able to capture one picture of this female Sasquatch walk by. He has given me permission to share this photo. I do ask you not to screenshot the next slide. Out of respect for him, he said I'm allowed to show it to you. He's remaining anonymous, and the location is also anonymous because he does not want trespassers on his land. So here's the photo. And it's pretty good, actually. When he emailed me and said, I've got a great picture of a Bigfoot I took from my hunting blind, I wasn't too excited until I saw this photo. When I saw the photo, I basically jumped in my truck and headed down there to Tennessee to meet this gentleman. I took the photo and I compared it to the Patterson-Gimlin photo or frame from the actual footage from 1967. And you can see the similarity. You can see the sagittal crest on top of the head, the cone, pointed skull. You can see the slope in the back. It's very close to Patty. So again, This is an example if there's photos out there, but a lot of people don't want to share them. So here's Bill Munns on the left with a replica he made of Gigantopithecus, 10-foot tall ape. You know, again, lived about 100,000 years ago in Asia. On the right is Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum from Idaho State University. And this is a replica of a Sasquatch. It stands 8.5 feet tall. If this was a living, breathing Sasquatch with muscles and tissue and hair, it would weigh about 1,000 pounds, half a ton. That's pretty big. So the best footage to date is still the Patterson-Gimlin footage. There's never been a suit produced. This video has been analyzed only second to the JFK assassination. Of all the videos out there, this footage right here has been analyzed only second number of times to the JFK assassination. When you look at this video, which I'm going to show you a little short clip of it, you can see the muscles contract. Back in '67, they did not have a 4-way stretch material that would show muscles contracting. There's a hematoma on the thigh. On the right leg, when Patty steps, you can see a bulge come out where she had some damage done to the tissue. And that bulge will go out and go back as she contracts her muscle. Pretty elaborate for a hoax. They measured the leg ratio, the upper leg and lower leg. And that ratio is nowhere near the ratio of a human. So a person could not be in a suit and bend their knee the same place she bends her knee. She's also a female, and they also casted tracks. So here's a clip of it. On this next screen. M.K. Davis took it and he enhanced it a little bit. You can see some of the muscles. And there's better clips than this out there now too. People have really done a nice job enhancing this. There's been hoaxers claiming to be the hoaxer, strictly for attention. You know, oh, it was me. They produced some sketchy evidence and, you know, strictly looking to get on TV or get on radio or get attention. So these are models of different fossils we had found over the years. Most eyewitness reports in Kentucky, where there's a close face-to-face encounter, the witness said it had a wide hooded nose. So I believe Bigfoot is closely related to humans. So I believe a Bigfoot is closer to some of these on the right side of the screen, or maybe the top up here. It's not a gorilla. If Bigfoot was a gorilla, we'd have it in a cage by now. And again, we have an extensive fossil record of different hominids. And this is interesting. So a couple of years ago, in the Philippines, we found yet another hominid. So check this out. That makes 7 different hominids living on this planet in the last 50,000 years. 50,000 years is not that long. And I believe Bigfoot is just another hominid that has not gone extinct yet. So, yeah, you know, every year we discover new species, right? And you're like, yeah, they're usually plants or microorganisms. No, we discover new mammals every year. So just a couple of years ago, a giant tortoise in the Galapagos. That's a very big, slow creature, unlike a Bigfoot, which is fast and elusive and highly intelligent. A new species of monkey that was in the Himalayas just a couple of years ago. And then, of course, another hominid in South Africa of those 7 I just described. So here's a sighting from your county. I love this sighting because when I was contacted by the mother, she said her daughter came home from a birthday party and kept telling me she saw a gorilla in the woods. And the mother's like, yeah, right. But the daughter was persistent and very convincing. So she actually, persisted enough to, the mother called me to do a follow-up on this report. And I actually talked to the daughter on the phone, and she was delightful. She was really cute, and she didn't talk much. I had to ask her a lot of questions, but some of the things she described were remarkable. So this was in Versailles, Kentucky. It was in 2015, and the location was right across the street from a house on Scotts Ferry Road. If you guys know where Scotts Ferry Road is, 420, the gorilla supposedly was standing in the woods with its back to the street. The father was taking the daughter to a birthday party, and it had just snowed. So the roads were pretty sketchy, and he had to drive really slow because of the weather. And he was also looking for the address of the house for the birthday party. The daughter in the passenger seat was looking out the window and sees this gorilla, she says. And of course, the dad never looked. He kept driving. So here's a sketch of it. Terry Thomas is an artist in our organization, and he does a fantastic job. He'll talk to the witness and try to get it as close as possible. And the picture here actually is a photograph where he took the sketch and put the sketch in the photograph of the actual location. And here's a picture of the road, and the creature was standing, I think I have an arrow, right here. And Jack Smar, he's a fellow researcher and good friend of mine, went there and met the witness, and the witness was in the car, and Jack stood by the tree, and they gauged the height of the creature at almost 10 foot tall. That's enormous. I'm going to go back a slide a second here. I'm going to show you something on this sketch that when I was talking to the little girl who's 8 years old on the phone, one unique thing she said, she goes, I saw the lines in its feet and the lines in its hands. I go, what do you mean the lines? She said, I just saw the lines in its feet and its hands. We figured out what she was seeing were the creases in its foot, because its foot, when it stepped, she could see the bottom of its foot. She could actually see the creases in the foot and also in the hands. That's how big this thing was and how close it was to the road as it walked away. I mean, it's kind of hard to make that up, I think, as an 8-year-old to say you saw the lines in its feet and hands. That's pretty unique. So here's some new encounters in Kentucky. I love this one. It's an elderly lady, lives alone, and she contacted me. She said, one night I went outside to take my dog to the bathroom, and I froze because something jumped up on this berm that's kind of in front of my house next to the road, which is hard to see, but where I'm standing in this bottom left picture here, it drops off down to the road. And she said this creature jumped up on all fours and landed on all fours and then stood straight up. So the picture on the right is what she saw. And again, Terry Thomas drew this nice sketch here. Really long arms. It had a wide hooded nose, long black hair all over it. And she said the craziest thing, she goes, my dog's a biting dog. Now everybody knows he's a biting dog, and he didn't even bark. He didn't make a sound. He just looked at this creature. And she said, when you come out here, I'll show you. My dog's a biting dog. I'll show you. And we went out there, we met her, and we took pictures. It's only about 80 feet away from where she was standing. And the neighbor on the left, you can't see this in this picture on the bottom, on the left there, he did have his porch light on, so there was some light. And the creature took off on all fours. It went back down to all fours and ran on all fours. And she said, man, it was quick. It was out of there in a second. When it stood, the significant part about it standing, she said it had wide shoulders, like a bear. It did not have ears on top of the head like a bear. It did not have a muzzle like a bear. So we kind of ruled out bear when we were going over the investigation. Another interesting thing, the neighbor next door had this big tree here on the left in this bottom corner, and he had seen what he thought were two teenagers up in his tree just a week prior. And he was in the house, and he went to find his camera to take a picture, and he went back outside and they were gone. This is a busy road. It's a 2-lane road, but it's very busy. There's no sidewalk. I can't imagine teenagers going up in his tree. And when we walked over to that tree, the first branch was over 10 feet up. You could not climb the tree. I wish I had a better picture there to show you the tree trunk. It was very, it was just impossible to climb, I think, for two teens to be in that tree. The Salt River, the reason I've got this marked on the picture is right over here. I've got, dozens of reports along the Salt River, all the way from the Ohio River, coming through Fort Knox, Bullitt County, all the way through up to Anderson County and Taylorsville Lake. So the Salt River seems to connect a lot of these sightings. This one was in LBL, land between the lakes. A family was fishing. During the day, bright sunny day, they decided to anchor the boat and cook some hot dogs on a little portable grill. And while they were doing this, they heard something up on the ridge walking. And the husband said to the wife, keep your eye up there. I don't think there's a trail, but it sounds like there's people walking this way. And these are some dense woods. We went out there and we met the witness and the daughter. There's no trail up there. It's just thick woods. And they kept looking up there to see if somebody's going to come out of the forest, and nobody ever did. And then they heard a loud tree knock. And the father looked to the son and said, did you just hear that? He said, yeah, I heard that. And he said, jokingly, he said, Bigfoot's knock on trees. So the dad grabbed a stick and he hit a tree. And when he did, another knock came from a different location. And they looked at each other and they said, we need to leave. So they loaded up the grill, they got in the boat. And as they were driving really slow away from the bank, the father spots this creature, which you see here in this picture. Now he drew this and he took his daughter's crayons and he colored it in for us. But it was reddish brown, had a flat face, and it was standing by this tree. He actually saw it twice before it ran off. This sighting was in Sandy Hook. The gentleman contacted us. I met him the same day. This was early in the morning, so it was later that day. We went to the location, and what was interesting about this sighting, it was standing by the road. He thought it was only 6 foot tall. That's what his first estimate was. When I went there and I stood in the same exact spot where he saw this and he drove by in his truck, he said, no, it was much bigger than you. And I'm 5'11". So we estimated it closer to 7.5 feet tall. And when he drove by it, it ducked down, it squatted down in the tall grass. What he did not know was Jack Smar of the BFRO took a similar sighting 2 years prior, less than a mile away as the crow flies. So in this picture here, you'll see down at the bottom is the BFRO sighting 2 years prior. And then the sighting I documented is up here at the top right. So this witness did not know about the previous sighting, which I thought was pretty neat. And this is a picture from where the creature stood. We walked along the road and we had parked our trucks further down. We walked over here and you can see two big impressions in the grass where something looked like it was standing there. I even pulled back the grass, but you couldn't really make out any tracks, just big impressions. It was really thick grass. I like this one here. Neal, he's a researcher in my organization. He's an ordained minister. He's also a Bigfoot researcher. So I like to joke that he preaches the gospel by day and he squatches by night. He went on a local radio show in Logan County. You know, some people don't have internet. It's hard to believe. This gentleman was in his 80s. He was a farmer and he didn't have the internet. So he didn't know about Bigfoot sightings in Kentucky. But he heard Don on this radio show. So he called the number and I spoke to him. He said, I was out there working my garden. It was around dusk. And I saw this big hairy creature standing on the other side of the fence. And I said, it's okay. You can come closer. And I just kept looking at him. I said, no, it's okay. You can come closer. And I realized I had my rake in my hand. I thought maybe the rake is scaring him. So I laid my rake down and I said it again. It's okay. You can come closer. The creature stepped over a 4-foot fence and walked towards this gentleman. Got about 20 feet from him. And he said it was gray in color. It had a human-like face with a wide hooded nose, thin lips. And they just looked at each other until he said, I got a little nervous and I decided it's time to leave. And as I turned around, and I walked back into the house. And right before I walked inside, I looked back and the creature was walking away behind my greenhouse. So when I went in the house, I had 2 potatoes for my garden. So I opened the door and I set the potatoes on the railing to my deck. He goes, you know, before I went to bed, I looked outside and those potatoes were gone. So this is an example of a face-to-face encounter where the witness was not harmed. I've got many reports in 3 decades of research of face-to-face encounters where these creatures could have hurt us and they did not. So that's another reason why I don't want to kill them. I want to protect them. So here's some classic encounters from Kentucky. You may have heard of Mr. Howdy. He was seen first in the 60s by Mr. Tyndall in his backyard. He said it walked out, stuck up his hand, and walked back into the forest. Fast forward to 2011, 2 teenagers from Florida just moved here. They were playing in their yard and this creature walked out and it raised its hand and walked back in the woods. They had no knowledge of Howdy, nor any knowledge of Bigfoot sightings in Kentucky. They had contacted the BFRO with the second report, and it's not far from the first report in the 60s. So again, this creature of the same behavior is being seen and within the same county, basically. And that's why I think they don't migrate. I think they stay in the same counties because we're getting the same descriptions over decades, actually. Howdy wasn't in the best of shape, as described by the witnesses. He had a little bit of a belly on him. The Wild Turkey Distillery is right there, so who knows? Here's a classic encounter, again, Anderson County. Both of these are in Anderson County, the one I just spoke of in this one. So again, not far from Woodford County, right across the Kentucky River from you guys. Lynn Hutton was bow hunting with his son. They'd come out of a cedar thicket. At the same time, a Sasquatch walked out of the opposite side of the cedar thicket. And it was just as surprised as they were. He said by the expression on its face, he did not expect to see them. And of course, we didn't expect to see this creature. Human-like, typical wide shoulders, long arms. And my boy, he said, wanted to see it. And I kept pushing him behind me. And I actually reached in my overalls to grab my pistol. And at the same time, the Bigfoot took slow backward steps into the tree line, never breaking eye contact, and disappeared. This one was unique because this lady took the same little country road to a hospital where she worked for over 20 years. And one morning at 5 a.m., her headlights hit this large animal in the road, and she slowly pulled up to it, and she could tell it was laying on its side in the fetal position. It took up almost the entire road. And as she got closer to it, oops, sorry about that. She flashed her high beams on. And when she flashed her high beams on, the creature started to move. She said it was so big, she couldn't see on either side of it. And when it stood up, it stood without using its arms, which she thought was remarkable because it stood up without even using its arms. And it twisted at the hip to look at her. It didn't turn its head, just like Patterson, the Patterson-Gimlin footage. Patty, if you notice in that footage, turns at the waist and looks back at Bob as he's filming it. Because of the huge trapezius muscles is one reason why these creatures don't turn their heads as easily as we do. She had no knowledge. This is a classic Bigfoot behavior, to turn at the waist. Here's a close-up of it. And again, when it stood up, she was impressed by the way it stood up and how fluid and how fast it took off. And it actually, when it took its first step, it swung its arm out, and then it took its step, which is another typical behavior of Bigfoot. And Albert Ostman in 1924, if you read up on that historical Bigfoot encounter where he was picked up in his sleeping bag and he was taken back to a cave, he observed these Bigfoots, which would sit by the cave wall and stand up without using their arms. This lady had no knowledge of Albert Ostman's report of Bigfoot standing up without using their arms. Also, which was remarkable about this Bigfoot laying in the road, again, this is a little country road in the middle of nowhere, not a lot of traffic. I found it unique when she reported this because I had never heard of a Bigfoot laying in the road. And I told Dawn, I said, let's research this because I've never heard of this. And we found over almost a dozen similar Bigfoot sightings of these creatures laying in the road, which we think maybe because of the heat from the road. There's even one here down here in Oregon of it laying in the fetal position, curled up in the road. This lady had no knowledge of this. We had no knowledge as Bigfoot researchers that they would lay in the road, so that was pretty unique. This one's a report of a Bigfoot in Adair County. The gentleman had read a report on my website of a Bigfoot near Green River Lake. So he put a trail camera out by the lake, and he said, I had to go back there early in the morning because I know people fish down there, and I didn't want somebody to take my trail camera. So I went back early the next morning to get my trail camera. This is a map of where the camera was. If you look here, you can see my mouse. There's a little pull-off area. And actually, this is where Bigfoot was seen crossing the road years prior. And when Dave, the witness, went to this location, down in this tree line, he found numerous deer carcasses and roadkill that had been dispersed along the woods here, probably from DNR or Fish and Game had taken roadkill and dumped them in this location because they were strewn throughout the trees, almost like a Bigfoot smorgasbord. Bigfoot buffet, whatever you want to call it, but it was free food for this Bigfoot, evidently. So he put his camera down here and he went back early the next morning to retrieve his camera. And this is a picture from the pull-off area. And he had this vehicle, it's a Honda Odyssey, so I used the same vehicle in my recreation here. And significant because the Honda Odyssey has the shifter up high on the car. It's in the middle console where you shift gears is where you shift it. It does not have the shifter by the steering wheel. So he pulled in here, he got out, he walked down the trail, which is behind this car, to get his camera. As he's walking up the trail, he heard something parallel him in the woods. So he would stop walking, and whatever that was would stop walking. And then he would walk, and then he would hear it walk. And he said, when I got to the top, I walked around the back of my vehicle, I opened the hatch, I put my camera in, and I smelled this really awful smell, like rotting flesh. And I looked over down the guardrail towards the smell, and I did not see anything. He said it was a very foggy morning, so it was kind of hard to see. So I got back in my vehicle, in the hatch, in the back of it. He was still messing around the back of it. And he kept smelling the smell. So he looked again. And when he looked for the second time, this creature stood up. And he said it started walking towards him, growling, this deep guttural growl. And of course, I shut the hatch, I ran around the vehicle. He goes, you know what? I had the urge for some reason to lay down on the ground in the fetal position. And then the rational part of my brain says, no, you're not doing that. Get in the car and let's get out of here. So he gets in his car. The creature walks all the way up to the guardrail. He first, when he looked at it, he couldn't see the head. But when he looked out the passenger window, he finally could tell the head was kind of sunken down. And he kept growling at him. He had his pistol on the passenger seat. So he said, I took my pistol and out the driver's window, the window was down, I fired a round into the ground to scare it. And it stopped. So then I went to put the car in gear to back up, and I had the pistol in my hand, and I inadvertently fired a round through the console of my car. And he said it was loud. You know, just fire a gun inside a car is very loud. I couldn't hear. But the adrenaline was pumping and I had to get out of there. So I threw it in reverse. Luckily, it didn't die. I backed up. I got out of there. I drove the wrong way. And I realized I got to go back through there. So I turned around. I went back through here. Thank goodness the creature was gone. I ended up going to a gas station and I went in the bathroom and he said, you know, I got sick in the bathroom. You know, I threw up in the bathroom. It was that traumatizing. So here's some evidence of structures and vocals and some photos and videos. These are typical structures we find at Bigfoot locations where there's been numerous sightings. Yes, these could be man-made, but we do think Bigfoots do this as well, possibly to mark their territory. Here's a nice howl taken by Jeff Waldridge, a friend of mine in Anderson County. Hopefully you can hear this. I'm going to play it again for you. That's pretty creepy. You heard that at night. So these vocalizations were from Scottsville, Kentucky, recorded by some ghost hunters. They had their recorder by an open window and they were trying to catch EVPs like ghost hunters do. They went outside to smoke, which I find kind of funny because I said, well, why'd you go outside to smoke? There's no windows or doors. He said, well, that's just what we did. We went out front to smoke. And we heard these crazy vocalizations coming off the ridge behind the house. And luckily his recorder caught these vocals. Here's one sample of the vocals it captured. That entire vocalization goes for 7 minutes. It can be heard on my website, KentuckyBigfoot.com. Here's another investigation we did where we captured some odd vocals. It's a very remote area. Nobody around. It was 18 degrees out. And it was, I think it was New Year's Eve almost. We're diehard squatchers out there right before New Year's. And we drove back in this area because I have another trail cam photo, an amazing one from a witness that I cannot release. But we did go back there squatching, and we heard these knocks, and then we heard these vocals that went off. After the vocals went off, the coyotes started up, which we hear quite often. We'll hear crazy vocals, and then we'll hear the coyotes. A little while later, the vocals will move, and the coyotes will move too, and you hear the coyotes follow possibly the Sasquatch, which we think there's some kind of relationship. If they're scavengers, they might be looking for a free meal. Maybe they're hunting together. We don't know, but there's some kind of relationship with the Bigfoots and the coyotes. So here's the vocals we captured. I'll play it one more time. And again, you had to be there. It's a very, very remote area. I mean, it was over 10 miles to the nearest house where we were, and there was nobody else out there with us, I'm pretty sure. So that was interesting. Tom Shea, he's a researcher in Northern Kentucky and a good friend of mine. He casted these tracks. He has more tracks as well that Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Cliff Berkman have in their collection. Legitimate tracks. At this location, we were squatching in the middle of the daytime. We were cooking bacon to attract a Bigfoot, and we're just sitting there. There was no wind. It's a nice sunny day. We're in the woods. I took my recorder, which is a little digital recorder with omnidirectional mics, and I hung it in the tree line away from us. And as we're sitting there, we heard a rock hit a tree, and we go, that's odd, because we could hear it fly through the trees and smack the side of the tree. It's a small rock. Didn't see it, we just heard it, and we're like, okay, that's odd. And then we heard the crows go off, sounding an alarm. These blackbirds were, something was disturbing these blackbirds. And then these whoops, which were amazing. That's good. That was me saying that's good. Those are the best whoops I've ever recorded. I've got other whoops too, but if you compare those whoops to any other known animal in Kentucky, there's nothing. The closest I could come would be a holler monkey in the zoo. And we don't have monkeys here in Kentucky, so that was a pretty significant find. This video was from Tennessee on an expedition. We had up at the top of the mountain, there's been lots of Bigfoot sightings, and we were in this location late at night, and we took thermal image of something running. Well, first it ran, we jumped something as we're hiking, and it ran off, and we turned and we videotaped this footage of something belly crawling. We do believe Bigfoots will go down to their bellies and crawl to look less obvious, less conspicuous, and they'll crawl. And this lasted for a few minutes as we filmed it. We could not hear it. And there's some trees in front of us, unfortunately. It's about 30 yards away. We did do reenactments of this. We had somebody out there crawling. We measured the distance and size. We only think it was about 6 foot tall based on the recreations. And at the end, it's just clipped together. At the very end, there's a round, looked like a head, a head pop up on the distance. But there's a lot of vegetation in between us in that video. So here's a still image of one of the frames. When it stuck its head out, there's one frame where it kind of sticks it out. You don't see a muzzle on it or ears like a bear. Most bear and deer would have ran away when you jump it. This thing went on for almost 5 minutes or more. Here's another still frame from it. And this frame here, what I like about it is the foot almost looks like it's pushing off. Again, you've got to be there. This is the top of a mountain, which took, almost 40 minutes to drive up this mountain late at night. We're the only ones up there. So I doubt there's anybody up there hoaxing us.
Hey, Charlie. I think we're missing a few slides. It's frozen on the new Kentucky Howell, Anderson County slide.
Okay. Let me go back. New Kentucky Howell?
Yeah, the Fraser land.
Okay, I'm there right now.
Okay, people were saying they wanted to see your still shots, yeah, of the other images.
Oh, I don't know. I have lots of frames I was going through. I don't know why it's not showing them.
Yeah, all we see is the Fraser land, Jeff Waldridge.
Okay, so now I'm on Kentucky vocalizations.
It didn't move forward.
All right, let me stop it and restart maybe. Okay, what about now?
There you go. Yep.
Okay,
Now it says Kentucky vocalizations, date April 10, 2010.
Okay, let me fast forward then. All right, here we go. Can you see this one?
Yeah, Ohio County investigation. Yeah, now we see the Trimble County. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys missed out on some of this. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Real quick on this one, these are the casts that Tom casted that are in Jeff Meldred's and Cliff Berkman's collection. And here's the thermal video. So you guys didn't see this here at all then. So here's the thermal footage of the belly crawling.
Oh yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of vegetation between us. And this is pieced together actually. So at the very end, it's another video spliced in here. We see it must have stood up and you see a round head bob between the trees here in a second. So right here, it's further back where we think they stood up. We actually thought there was two of them. So now is the frame where you can see on this still image from one of the frames where it stuck its head out in the video, you really don't see a muzzle. So it could be a possible a juvie, which is like a young Bigfoot belly crawling. And here's another frame where the rear foot looks like it's pushing off, like if something was belly crawling. And again, most bear won't belly crawl or deer, they would take off. So after we dumped it, this thing was crawling. So now I'll go to the Facebook page and I'll answer some questions if you guys have questions. My website's KentuckyBigfoot.com. Also just formed another organization in Canada. You can go there, it's CanadaBigfoot.com. And I thank you guys for listening. And please go to the comments and I will go there and try to answer your questions. Thank you.
Hey, Charlie, we've got quite a few questions here, so I can start with Brian has asked, how many of you work on the encounters?
Usually just one of us will take the encounter, myself, Don Neal, or Jim Wilcox. Sometimes we'll go, together, but we're in different parts of the state, so it depends on who's closest to the encounter. We'll go out there and interview the witness. And also, too, the witnesses don't want a bunch of people out there sometimes, so we don't want a crowd. It's a little bit more intimate if one of us goes out.
Brian also asks, what do they eat?
I think they're omnivores, so they'll eat deer primarily in Kentucky. Also, we have a lot of crops like corn, soybean, other fruits and vegetables in Kentucky. We have apples and pears and persimmon. So we do think they eat a wide variety of food, and I do think they eat nonstop. They have a lot of calories they need to consume.
Lindsay asks, have you ever received a report of an aggressive encounter?
We do, and they're usually bluff charges. They usually don't follow through on their aggression. They stop and they scare us. And I can attest to that. I usually leave. But no, they're very rare. In over 3 decades of reports, over 300 cases, I don't have one of them hurting a person.
Let's see. Sean asks, where are they thought to live? Open woods, cave, etc.
Most of them live in the dense forests around Kentucky. I do believe they will utilize caves, but I do not believe they set up shop and build a house, so to speak. It's too risky to build a nice structure to live in. So I do believe they'll be opportunistic and use a cave, use an abandoned building. Sometimes just lay down under a fallen tree. We got reports of them laying there with leaves on them, and they kind of cover themselves up. So again, they'll sleep almost anywhere, but they move a lot. We even think there's a sentry that stands guard during the day, because we get knocks during the daytime, which are fairly loud. And we do believe that's a warning that humans are present. Usually it's one loud knock. It means people are present. So we think, and we kind of think it's a sentry standing guard while the others sleep.
Let's see. Colin asks, how many offspring do they give birth to at a time, do you think?
I would say one. They're similar to humans. I'm thinking one. So I think lifespan as well is close to ours, maybe 100 years or less. No, we don't have all the answers, but our guess is probably one. Like a gorilla, two. If it's something between a gorilla, we usually have one offspring. So.
Okay, next question is, with what you have researched, do you have a rough idea of how many may be in the state of Kentucky?
Yeah, we can look at an area like, for example, let me take Anderson County. Where there's one, there's more. A lot of reports, a lot of activity that we get and interactions are from multiple Bigfoot. We'll get knocks, both sides of us, so we know there's at least 2 of them. Usually family units could be anywhere from 2 to 5. We got a report in Fort Knox. It's on my website. If you go to videos, it's a pretty chilling encounter of a sergeant that came across 5 of them, a family of 5 in Fort Knox. You could listen to his testimony there. But so if a family unit is anywhere from 2 to 5 and they're in one county, you look at how many counties we have, there's reports. So I wouldn't say more than 1,000, but I would say more than 100. So, hundreds.
Okay, the questions keep coming in. So, where in Kentucky are the most sightings reported?
Anderson County. So it's near you guys, and there's probably more reports. A lot of them go undocumented. There's a lot of people that are fearful of ridicule, so they don't come forward. So I do believe there's a lot more reports out there, especially Eastern Kentucky. If you go over there, and I've investigated some reports over there, there's some pretty big mountains and ridges and, people living there that do not want the visitors on their property. So they don't want to share their encounters. So they're a little more tight-lipped in the eastern part of the state. But right now, Anderson County is red hot. And there's some other counties on the website you can go to, and you can look at the number of reports.
So our next question is from Brian. So with the knocks, do you think they communicate that way?
Yes, the knocks is an easy way for them to communicate. So here's what I think they are. One knock, when you go out squatching or hiking and you hear one loud knock, it's telling another Bigfoot, we've got humans present, lay low, because everything gets quiet. When we leave the area, sometimes there's a loud knock, like the coast is clear. They're telling another Bigfoot, okay, the humans have left. So one knock we think is that. The multiple knocks are kind of a location, like I'm over here if you need me, I'm over here if you need me. We get knocks with whoops quite often. And we'll hear that. And then on the other part of the trail, you'll hear another knock reply, like I'm right here. We've got knocks and whistles together. And then another knock in response. So some of it's location. They're letting each other know where they are during a hunt or if humans are present.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions about the Memorial Day footage. It isn't as popular of a video, but it's very intriguing.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's so many hoaxes out there. I do believe that's legit. That footage is legit. Sasquatch, the legend of this, what is it? No way, it's called Sasquatch Science meets Legend. Yeah, that's what it is, the documentary. You could watch them analyze that extensively. The thing with that, when they analyze it, they took a sprinter, a world-class sprinter, and he was able to run as fast as the subject in the footage, which doesn't mean much to me. I mean, it doesn't matter if a sprinter can, a world-class sprinter can run as fast as this Bigfoot was running. That doesn't deter me from believing it was legit. Also, this creature gets larger at the end of the footage, and it's hard to see, but it's almost as if it had a baby on its back. And when it got to the tree line, the baby went up on its shoulders. You can see it get larger. During that footage as well, the terrain was very uneven. I think the sprinter fell even when he was trying to run a couple times. So it could be legit. The problem now is there's so many hoaxes. It does not matter if you get clear footage of these things, people are going to question it. So unfortunately, it's going to take a body.
Okay, pardon my dog there. The next question is from Michael. Could they be territorial?
Yes, definitely. And I've experienced that. We've gotten close many times where they push trees over, they bluff charge, throw rocks, and take it from me, you leave. You know how big these things are based on the size of the tree, the size of the branch break, the deep guttural growls, and your innate fight or flight kicks in, and usually it's my flight, and I leave. So they will let you know if you've gotten too close. So I respect that, and I also value my life. So I usually leave.
You may have answered some of this before, but Someone asks if they live in large groups.
We think like a family unit, a clan, if you will, of, I don't know, maybe 2 to 5. But I do believe the young males, teenagers, will go out on their own eventually, looking for a new family. So, but yeah, they are very social. They like to hunt together. We've got reports of them hunting together. We've got sightings of multiple, groups of them together. So we do believe they live in family units.
Dave asks, are there any whistle recordings?
Yeah, there's some whistle recordings. I believe I might have a few on my website. And usually the whistle, it's a straight line whistle. I'll see if I can do it. It's just a straight whistle. We hear that quite often late at night, and you'll hear another whistle from another location whistle back to it. I've gotten whistle and knocks in reply to our knocks. We knocked, and then we get a whistle and knock back. A good example is the Girl Scout encounter. If you go to my website, I believe it's down there in Mammoth Cave, where I took a bunch of Girl Scouts out. We had a whistle and knock in reply to our knocks, and then a bluff charge right after. So yeah, the whistle's just straight line whistle. So if you go out there and you're squatching and you're hiking at night, just try a straight whistle and maybe do it with a knock.
Let's see, we've got a few questions. Let's see about is there any way to look at the Memorial Day footage? Is it on your Kentucky website?
It's not on my website. I do not own that footage. I'm surprised if it's not on Google or YouTube. I would think it's on YouTube somewhere if you Google that. If not, Google Sasquatch Legend Meets Science. And I do know there's videos on YouTube from that documentary. And in that documentary, they show the Memorial Day footage.
Let's see, what's the largest Bigfoot that's been reported in Kentucky?
Here's the thing. We've done lots of experiments with this, and we've also interviewed witnesses. Most of the time when we go out there and we recreate the sighting and we stand where the Bigfoot stood, it's much larger than what the witness first estimated. So we have one report down by Ohio County. The creature was standing near an old railroad bed, and there was a railroad post. I guess they used to hang bags on them or something, and the creature was standing near this post, so they were able to gauge the height of it, and it was almost 12 foot tall, which is really big if it's 12 foot tall. The one I just talked about in your county, when that little girl, this was like a day later, basically, they took the little girl and the dad went back there with Jack, and Jack stood where the Bigfoot stood. And you can see by that picture, it was close to 10 foot tall. So they're a lot bigger than what we think they are.
Lindsay asks, have you had reports of them mimicking owls or other creatures?
Yes. 800-pound owl going up, and you're like, okay, that did not sound legit. Somebody's out here messing with us. So we do think they mimic other animals. And you can't prove it. I mean, you'd almost have to see one do it, to be honest, but we do think they do that because, okay, here's an example. In Kentucky, in the Daniel Boone National Forest, Lee County, I have a hunter. He was out before dawn, sitting on a hillside with his rifle in camo. And he said, I'm sitting there, and this rock the size of a baseball comes whistling through the air and lands in the grass next to me and sticks in the grass. with a thud. And I yelled out, okay, whoever that is, I'm armed. That's not funny, because he thought somebody was messing with him, right? Through this big rock. Right after that, he hears this 800-pound owl make a hoot sound. He goes, I know that was not an owl. He goes, somebody was messing with me, which wasn't too bright because I've got a loaded weapon with me and I'm in the middle of nowhere. So this could have been a Bigfoot.
We've got a question here. Do you ever do Facebook Live Sasquatch huntings?
No, I haven't really. I post pictures and some video afterwards. I need to start doing that because it's fairly easy to do if you have signal. It's the last time I tried it. I think I was going to try it. We didn't have signal. So the issue is some places we go, we don't have signal to do it.
Next, Sean asks, what happens on a bluff charge?
They usually break branches, push trees over. So I'll give you an example. And this happened in Anderson County. But again, other side of the Kentucky River from you guys, on an expedition. Gosh, it was like the third day. I was tired. So I sat up with my buddy on this top of this field in the dark in our chairs. And while we sent a team down the field to this little trailhead that went in the woods, paralleled a creek, and they radioed to me and they said, hey, listen, we just heard some growls, some really deep growls. Can you bring a thermal down here? And I looked to my buddy. I said, okay, I guess I got to go down there. So I went down there. And at the time, I had a cheap thermal that hooked to my phone, a little Seek thermal that, and they don't really work that well, but I had it on my phone. And I meet the young man at the edge of the forest there. And he goes, man, I was getting my water in my backpack and this thing growled at me. And then his dad came up, goes, yeah, I heard it too. And a couple more people came up. Yeah, I heard it too. I'll go, okay, just calm down. So I took my thermal and it's so thick, you could not see in the forest where we were. I go, well, let's go back up the field. So we all go back up the field. We meet my other friend and we're talking about it. And as we're talking about it, they go, quiet. We just heard the growls again. I go, really? And they go, yeah, we heard them down there again. So my friend and I and another gentleman walked down the field in the dark, all the way down, gosh, it was about 50 yards or more to the tree line. And right as we approached the tree line, my friend makes an aggressive growl. And I can't even do it justice. It was like, but really loud. And you're going to think I'm exaggerating this, but I'm not. Immediately, directly in front of us in the woods, a tree is pushed over and you can hear the stress fractures as it's cracking, as something's pushing it. And then you hear it hit the ground, thump. And we're like, oh my gosh. So we run up the field to everybody else. And we get up there and the landowner who was there, he said, Charlie, first of all, did you hear that growl? I go, well, that was Don. He made the growl, but I did not push the tree over because he thought the landowner thought I pushed the tree over. I go, I didn't push the tree over. It did right after he made his aggressive growl. So the answer to the question is, it was kind of upset with us getting too close and it broke that tree. We did go back the next day and I've got pictures of it. We found this evergreen with a fresh break, splintered. I took lots of pictures of it. It looked like the tree that it pushed down. Also that night, I forgot to add, after it pushed the tree and after we're at the top of the field, maybe 10 minutes later, two other people decide to walk down the field, but further down to the right, and they did a whistle. Immediately after the whistle, from back in the woods on the creek, they received 3 rock clacks, clear as day, something clacking rocks together 3 times. And we've got that recorded as well. So we do believe there's a Bigfoot back there, and it did show some aggression towards us with like a bluff charge. Other bluff charges, I've got reports, Taylorsville Lake, of sheriff was fishing late at night in a cove, and this thing, he said, sounded like a bulldozer coming down off the ridge, breaking branches, making deep guttural growls. And he said, we can never see it. And I shined my flashlight. We could never see what it was, but it was really aggressive towards us. And I identified myself as a police officer, and it kept breaking branches, and we decided to pull anchor and get out of there.
Wow. We've got quite a few comments from Lindsay. She's checking in from Canada. And she says in Alberta, Canada has a report of a 15-foot Sasquatch.
Wow. Yeah, I think in Canada and the, Pacific Northwest, you've got a lot more forest there than we do. So I do think they can reproduce easier. They have a lot more food source than what we do. So they tend to be larger in Canada, and also, Northern California, Washington State, Oregon, they tend to be a little larger than Kentucky. Kentucky, I will tell you this, the average size in Kentucky, you're looking about 7.5, 8 foot is the average size in Kentucky.
See, our next question from Rhoda is, do you wear a GoPro camera while you are out walking?
No, I need to, though. I've been told that many times. I need to get one. And they've got these new ones that are 360. So when you're hiking, it'll pick up video from any direction. And I've been close many times. I can't even tell you. I brought them real close to me with tree knocks and whoops and so forth. And I end up leaving when they get too close. And I really need to have a GoPro. You're right.
Is there any other questions? Does anybody want to chime in at the last minute? That was our last question so far. I'm not seeing any more activity here. Thank you so much, Charlie. This has been so fascinating and informative.
You're welcome. Sorry the screen didn't advance after that slide. I wish I would have known that. I would have went back sooner.
Oh, somebody asks, Randy asks, do you think they eat deer?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I got reports of them carrying a deer over their shoulder and picking up roadkill. Roadkill's an easy meal for them. Lots of reports of them with deer. A lot of skeletons we find where there's been Bigfoot sightings. The rear leg is snapped. Coyotes don't break the rear leg. Hunters don't break the rear leg. So we find the rear leg snapped, which we think Bigfoots do, maybe to immobilize them. We're not quite sure why they may do this, but yeah, deer are their primary food source in Kentucky.
We've got a few more questions. We're open to continuing with the questions.
Oh, sure.
Where did it go here? Jeff says, I saw a juvenile in 1978 when I was 12 on our family farm. We never had any more until 2016 when we had a lot of mumbling and the tree breaking in the woods and found a 13-inch print in the edge of the backyard. Is it common for them to stay away that long?
So was it 13 years, he said?
He is 1978 to 2016, so that would be
That's quite a while.
Quite a while, yeah.
I think actually what's happening there is they could be passing through. It could be, they're just not as engaging for some reason at that time. It could be another family unit even that has moved in. And the first Bigfoot could have moved on that he saw, and then maybe another family unit came and occupied the area. So we don't, it's hard to tell in that case, but I do want his phone number. If you can message him back, I don't know, or I could. I'd like to speak to him about his encounter.
Yeah, we can try to make sure you guys get in touch with each other.
Okay.
One last question here. Any reports around Carter Caves?
Yes, there's a bunch of reports in Carter County. Some of the Bigfoot out there are white. Come back. Carter County used to be the hot spot. When I first started the website in 1997, my first reports came from Carter County. There's a great group there. Trying to think of the name of it. Carter County, if you go to Facebook, Carter County Bigfoot, her name is Tabitha, and she started a group there. So if you could find that on Facebook, she documents a lot of reports in that area.
Lindsay, again from Canada, says, where was this? People can Google the Bighorn Dam incident for details about that huge Bigfoot in Alberta. And someone just posted the Memorial Day footage. That was on YouTube. So.
Oh, good. Oh, and that video of the bull tar, I'll post a video on the comments if they want to see.
Oh, yes, somebody, it might be a friend of yours or something. They posted it early on, like right after you started talking. But you may want to go ahead and share it again because I can't see it now. There's a lot of comments. We've got 100 comments now, Charlie. So.
Oh, good.
Jeff Johnson, he said he'll message you. He's the one who saw the juvenile in 1978.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, he'll message you. Oh, one last question. Randy asks, what do you think their range is, and do you think they migrate south in the winter?
No, I believe it's too risky. If you look at Kentucky, we have huge pockets of forest, but then we've got neighborhoods, shopping centers, interstates. It's much too risky to venture out of their habitat where they live now. So there's no need to also. I mean, they've got a lot of hair, which keeps them warm. So the only way they would leave is if we force them out of an area or lack of food or looking for a mate. But yeah, I don't believe they migrate very far.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we've got for now. That was plenty of questions. So thank you all for joining us, and thanks again to Charlie.
You're welcome.
And we hope to have you back sometime again in the future for perhaps a live program. But I think this worked out pretty well with a few glitches here and there.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us.